And we are live. Guys, welcome to the Bassin Magazine podcast. My name is James. I'm going to be your host. With me tonight, actually, Brad Yule is having some technical difficulties, which, go figure. It's the Bassin Magazine podcast. We have technical difficulties. It's just part of our thing. Bassin Magazine is the official magazine of the weekend angler. I love it. I love it. I love it. With me tonight, I have Jacob Frazier. Jacob Frazier is the assistant bass fishing coach. What a cool freaking job. Carson-Newman University, powerhouses, bass fishing powerhouses. And he's also the head kayak bass fishing team coach. Wow. Jacob, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. We just got done having a little inter-squad tournament out on Cherokee. So I smell like fish sitting here, but it was a great time. Got all the guys out there on the water. So it was good.
That must have been fun. So you just, man.
Yeah.
I can remember my second wife telling me I came home from fishing and take a shower and you still smell like that. What's wrong with that?
I like the smell. I don't know if I wish they made it in a cologne, but I'm fine with it on my hands.
I don't know if it's so much that we like the smell or if it reminds us of some of the coolest things we've ever done and seen.
Yeah. I would say that's probably more along the lines.
I smell walleyes. It reminds me of being up north with my dad when I was young, and it was a much simpler time in my life.
Yeah.
Just nothing else in the world can trigger that,
Right.
But, also bass, some of the just best times I've ever had. The sun's going down. It's nice. It's 75 degrees in northern Illinois, and I'm casting a frog, and the water is just still.
Yeah. That's awesome. I wish we could have more 75-degree days. It's like we get a couple warm days, and then it's freezing cold or pouring the rain, or here recently it's been the wind here.
Yeah, even down here in Baton Rouge, where it's almost never windy, we've had 30-mile-an-hour winds lately. It makes So Carson-Newman, man, I love talking about Carson-Newman. Actually, Jackson Orr called me last night. We talked for a while. I was going to try to get him on, but he is currently practicing, which I'm jealous. But so when did you hire on?
I got hired on of January of 22. So I went to Carson-Newman. I was part of the first recruiting class back in 2018. Yeah. So I fished at Carson-Newman for 3.5. Well, technically I fished for 4 years. I graduated in December of 21, got hired on January of 22. I fished, I think, 2 or 3 tournaments. And then, my focus has been fully on getting the kayak team off the ground and going.
Well, is Lee Rose going to fish kayaks for you?
I don't know. I know she does a lot in the summer. Obviously, her dad is a big contributor to us.
The dugout, yeah.
Yeah. Big help and big shout out to him for all that he does for us. I don't know. I've gotten Carter. Her brother actually fished one of the first ones on Lake Chateaug. Carter fished it, but she had stuff going on, so she couldn't make it. So I don't know. You might see her in a kayak before she graduates. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's up to her. She's a very busy person.
She sure is. But what a nice person. What a great angler,
Yeah.
So where are you guys sitting right now?
So you boat or kayak?
Boat.
I'm pretty sure we're sitting in 5th. I would have to go back and double check. I don't know if they have updated the points since the national championship last week on the Kissimmee chain, but I think we're right around that 5th mark.
Wow, Kissimmee. Boy, must have been a lot of tournaments going on down there. Lots of them. There must have been boats everywhere.
Yeah, I know we sent I think we had 6 or 7 boats. I could be mistaken, but we had boats down there for 11 straight days because the MLF and the bass one it didn't really overlap, but they were 1 week right after the other.
Yes.
So it was just financially, it made more sense for us just to stay and fish than it was to make that drive all the way back up here to East Tennessee and turn around and send them right back.
Well, I mean, my goodness. The competitive bass fishing game is just expensive. There's no two ways around it.
There's not.
There's just no
There's
two
not.
ways around it. And once you've been bitten by the bug, then there's no going back. You're
No,
not going to be happy with just regular. Well, you can fish over there. No.
no. And I thought
I
kayak
need to
fishing
get
would
a
be a
nice.
cheaper option, and it is for the most part. But then I got into it, and I don't know why, but like if I go into something, it's like head first. I can't just like dip my toe in it. I got to go full in. So I've already bought a trailer and bought new tires for it and jack. It's actually going to get dropped off at a fabrication shop tomorrow to have it built to the way I like it. So I'm going to have over $1,000 in a trailer here soon. Then you look at entry fees and travel. I think Florida cost me about $1,000. I went
Yeah.
and fished the BOS event there. So it might be a little bit cheaper, but I guess, for me going all in, it's really not that much.
Well, you can either. I know when I would fish on Green Bay, when I was fishing walleyes way back when, we would save a little bit of money by driving our boats around instead of driving the boat across the bay when we were practicing.
Yeah.
But I guess that's probably the only expense that you'd spare, boat
Yeah.
gas,
Yeah. We don't have
because you're
boat
driving that.
gas, and we don't have, typically, your truck isn't getting 12 miles to the gallon because, you're not pulling a boat behind you that weighs over a ton plus all your tackle and gear. Excuse me. But I mean, I pulled a trailer with me, and we have a utility trailer that had double gates on it. We use it a lot for hunting. And I was like, oh, I can rig it up. So I ran conduit across it in 3 different areas so those kayaks would sit on it perfectly off the ground. But yeah, that thing weighed over 1,000 pounds, and I got just as bad as fuel economy pulling that as I do pulling the boat. But hopefully the new trailer will do a lot better.
Yeah, hopefully, man. I hope that works out for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that Carson-Newman has a kayak fishing team, are there going to be crossover between the kayak anglers and the
So
anglers?
So pretty much the guys who, like, for example, Jackson and Ewing, both of those guys were already here before we had a kayak team. So they kind of are allowed to cross over and fish both. Besides that, we try to keep it as separate as possible, just because we're two different entities, different budget and stuff through the school. So we try to keep it as separate as we can. But it's just like Division I basketball. You're going to put your best guys out there on the court. So say I recruit somebody for kayak fishing who is just like on a tear and is winning everything. We're probably going to put him in a boat with somebody and let him travel some.
Yes,
Brad,
Jake. Hey guys, how are you guys?
Hey, this Brad Yule. This is Jacob Frazier from the Carson-Newman bass fishing team. He's the assistant coach for boats and the head coach for kayaks.
Hey, sweet. I like your dugout hat.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Know those guys? Yeah.
Good folks down there.
Yeah. I'm having huge technical difficulties. It stormed here, and my camera's not working, but my mic's working. Earlier, my camera's working and not my mic, but I'm here, so we'll get this figured out.
Well, that's great. That's great. Brad's a huge kayak fisherman too, Jacob.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, he's also friends with Jackson. Or I tried to have Jackson on tonight too, Brad, but he's practicing.
Oh yeah.
I believe he's in Gunther's.
Yeah, the BASS is on Gunnersville. So there's going to be a Hobie event, BASS, and an All-American Kayak Series all within the next 3 weekends. So I know a couple of people that are going to try to hit all 3 of them. That's a lot of traveling, a lot of driving, a lot of fishing.
It is. I know we have think I got 4 guys going to Gunnersville. Jackson's the only one that's already there. And then all 4 of those guys going there, I'm going to meet them in Chattanooga, me and another guy, and we're all going to Caddo to fish the BOS event next week.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, gonna be a lot of miles
That'll
for
be
them
fun.
boys.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. Caddo, big fish, and the big fish are biting in that area. Man.
Good. I've never been, so hopefully it's a good time. I'm sure I'll have a great time with all the guys.
They just had another 15-pounder caught on a Bussy Break, which is in north central
Wow.
Louisiana.
Yeah, that's big, man.
So they're here.
Yeah.
As a team, how do you guys break down water? Do you do it individually and then share notes, or do you get on speakerphone all day, or what?
So, I don't force anything. I feel like when you force people, to share stuff, you don't get the true answer. So I try to let them do it themselves. So I do make them travel to a vehicle. One, it's a little bit cheaper to travel that way, but 2, I always like, if something was to ever happen, there's somebody there with them. Especially, I have a girl on my team, so I don't really like her being at launches before and after dark. For that reason. So they kind of travel together. I'm sure they share a lot of information with each other. And most of our guys are very open about it. They may not tell you like, hey, I'm catching them on this exact spot, throwing this exact bait. But, they'll give you an idea like, hey, the river is fishing pretty good. You should probably go check it out. Or I'm catching them on a crankbait. They kind of throw everybody a bone here and there just because, they want to see everybody do good just as much as I do.
Right.
Especially my older guys. My older guys have shown really good leadership so far and showing them how we try to do things at Carson-Newman.
How many seniors do you have on your team?
So on the kayak team, only one. He was on the boat team because this is only our first year as a kayak program.
Right.
He was on the boat team, and he had a Phoenix, and then he worked at the dugout for a summer and figured out how much he loved kayak fishing. So he actually sold his boat and bought a Hobie. So,
yep. I understand that. I got my Hobies and didn't fish out of my Ranger, but 2 times.
How many years old is the?
Wow. Is the what? Sorry about that. You kind of cut out on me.
How many years old is this program that you're?
So, like I said,
you're one of the first classes to be recruited?
Yeah. So the program started back in. I would have to go back and look at the dates now. I think it was around 2016. Bassmaster came to Cherokee, and when they did, they hosted a lot of stuff, or for college level, they came to Cherokee, and they did a lot of stuff on campus. I think the final day weigh-in was actually on campus. So we didn't have a team at the time, but there was a couple staff members, Aaron Porter and Robert Key. They saw that and they sent it out and just asking any student, if anybody would be interested. They think it'd be really cool to have representative of the school there. And Hunter Sells was one of them. Him and his partner Tristan Stallsworth, who's actually our controller now at Carson-Newman. Those 2 said they would, and I think we had a couple other people who may have fished it. So that was kind of the start of it. And then I think they didn't really fish much else. And the next year, they came back and they fished it again, and then they fished the national championship, and I think a couple other ones. So we've been around for 7 years, I believe. I could be wrong. Hunter will probably correct me on that. I think it's 6, but only full-time recruiting since 18. So I guess this will be year 5 for us recruiting-wise.
Okay. Interesting.
How have you done statistically over the tournaments as you've grown every year with the recruiting class?
Yeah, so I think my freshman year here, we finished 20th in the nation. Sophomore year, we were 10th. My junior year, we finished 4th. Senior year, we dropped to 5th, and right now we're sitting in 5th.
Sweet.
So we was a nobody. Now, we're a top 10 team in the country every year. And by the looks of our recruiting class, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Well, I love following you guys, man. You guys are a powerhouse. You're the people you recruit are really interesting. You know, I've had on Jackson Orr and Lee Rose. They had Lee Rose on a couple of times.
Awesome.
And of course Hunter's been on. Hunter's a regular, you know.
Yeah.
He's just a lot of fun to interview. You know, I always tell him, you know, stack the deck, Hunter. And you too, Jacob, stack the deck.
I'm working on it.
That's what your job is, man. As a I'm sure Brad, you'll agree with me, won't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
His job is to stack the deck. I know that Carson-Newman is my favorite collegiate team. You know, I root for you guys.
We appreciate that.
Because I'm just a bass fishing geek, man. I mean,
yeah, you got some good teammates on your team. You got some very humble, very knowledgeable fishermen. Those anglers, you know, and I don't know all of them, so I can't speak for your whole team. But with the couple that I do know, and knowing Jackson on the level that I know him, I think that you can pick up your teammates with a positive attitude and succeed even if you're not catching fish. And I think every year you're growing to see that with your new recruiting classes from your older kids.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we got guys who they were real shy at first, especially our big leaders now, and they've kind of came out of their shell a little bit to lead our program because, you know, we're in a sport where you lose a lot more than you're ever going to win. I don't know the exact percent chance of what even Kevin Van Dam, I think he's got the most wins in the world. And I'd say it's still, he loses over 90% of the time in our sport. So you have to be humble to stay, I feel like, to stay competitive, because after time, you know, it takes a mental toll on you just to get beat over and over and over again. But I feel like that's how you learn. You go out there, you go to new places that you're not comfortable with, and you get your teeth kicked in a couple of times. But eventually, you know, you're going to learn some stuff here and there to kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together. So when you win, it makes it that much better.
100%.
I really enjoyed the way that you described that, because think about it, you know, you're fishing the Toyota Series, 326 competitors. My goodness. That's not like a basketball game where you're playing one team, right?
Yep.
All right, it's not even like, you know, March Madness where, you know, it's more competition than that.
I've been saying for years, you know, go back 10 years and look at some tournament histories over BASS, over FLW, that level. The days of the same guy winning over and over and over, or the same four winning over and over, they're long gone.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yep. Even look at Rick Clunn and the career that he's had. I think his last win was somewhere in Florida several years ago. But besides that, like, I don't know how many times Mr. Clunn has won in the 2000s, and he used to be one of the biggest names in fishing.
Right. And if you're out fishing for a living, absolutely you want to win. That's your goal. You're not out there for second place. You know, if you ain't first, you're last. But if you're making a living, I got fifth place in the BOS. I'm stoked to death about that. I fished my butt off and look at some of the people that I fished against.
Yeah.
You know, there's anglers out there. You're not the best. Somebody's always faster than you on the field. Somebody's always a better angler. Somebody can run faster, hit further, whatever. But everybody has their off day. Everybody can be beaten on any given day. And you can win on any given day.
Yeah, and I think confidence has a lot to do with that too. Yes. I know me and Hunter's talk, you know, when you back your boat in the water or put your kayak in the water, you know, you have to think that in that given day, you know, you still be humble about it, but you got to know, like, I'm better than these people. Like, you can't just look over and say, oh, well, you know, let's say I'm fishing at BFL and Jacob Wheeler hops in it. I can't look and say, oh, Wheeler's here, I'm going to get beat.
Yeah.
You got to put your boat in the water and know that you are just as good or better than everybody out there. Fish with confidence all day long.
I don't know if you know Fred Rabanis or not. He was an Okie. He moved. He lives on Dardanelle now. Obviously, his kid Jackson won the BOS last year. But I fished against Rabanis in 3 different tournaments, and if you have the mentality of, oh my gosh, there's a pro in this, I'm going to lose, or I have the mentality of, man, I just want to, if he gets 50th, I want 49th. I just want to beat him, just to have that personal, and I'm beat him 3 times, with that own mindset.
Yeah.
Now, is he trying something new on a different lake? You don't know, but you're in a tournament and you're fishing hard, and that's something that you get to take home, whether it's first place or 25th.
Yep. Exactly.
That's one thing we talk about here on the Bass and Magazine podcast. Just about every one of our episodes is confidence. What we're specifically honing in on, you have to have confidence in what you're in the presentation. If you know how to use this lure, you know how to use it the best of your ability, and it's caught you 300 fish, you're going to have confidence in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
How do you get that confidence? Well, there's just no substitute for time on the water.
Right.
Yeah, there's not. And, as much as we travel, obviously there's baits that all of our guys have confidence in. And I would tell anybody, always to fish baits you have confidence in. You may go to a new lake where, say, they're biting offshore throwing a big crankbait. Well, if you don't like a big crankbait, in my opinion, I feel like you're wasting your time out there trying to figure out. I think that, when it's not tournament time, you should be out there learning it, trying to get better at it. But I feel like in tournaments, you have to do what you're confident in. If you're confident throwing a Ned rig, those fish that's biting that big crankbait are going to bite that Ned rig. If it's a drop shot, a jig, Carolina rig, whatever it may be, for the most part, you can catch fish on your confident baits at any lake in the country. You just have to figure out a way to do it.
Right.
So how are you pushing these young competitive anglers to be the best that they can be? How does Jacob Frazier do that?
It's pretty tough. We have meetings we try to do it every week, but as much as we travel and stuff, it turns out to be once every other week or once every 3 or once a month, whatever it is. As soon as we can meet up, we can. And, we're always talking about ways to improve ourselves. There's some stuff that I send them throughout time. Like I know Gerald Swindle just had a great video that he done with, I can't remember the name of it, but he talks for an hour about, positive mental attitude and stuff and confidence. And that's something I always tell them because, obviously you've got guys who skill sets are above others. And you just got to make sure you put it in those kids' heads that, hey, just because that guy's better than you at, certain things doesn't mean you can't get to that level. The only way you can learn is to get out there and fish. And about every time I go down there, I see my guys loading up kayaks to go out and fish. And it's great to see them putting in the work to try to get better. And I think those guys are going to be the ones who I see this year on the college trail who are starting to do, a lot better.
With something you said, whether you're pro or whether you're an amateur, something that we hear from anybody on this podcast is they don't know every single technique, and they're not comfortable with every single technique. So if your confidence is, like you said, a Ned rig, and that's where you're going out, whether that guy's out on deep ledges or not, maybe he doesn't have the confidence that you have in that Ned rig, and you're going to catch him.
Yep. No, that's 100%.
I don't think anybody, Jay, do you think anybody said, I know how to fish everything? Or every single person has said, I'd like to learn how to do X, Y, Z.
We've had a couple guys who have said, I have to know how to fish every presentation, but they all admitted that, they have their weaknesses and then they try to work on their weaknesses, but they end up always going back to confidence lures, which is me,
Yep.
I'm not very good at jigging, and boy, and since my roots are in walleyes, where I sat there all day long jigging with a rod in each hand, I don't understand it, but if they're biting on wacky rigs, that's what I'm throwing.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's actually the same bait I caught all my fish on in Florida at that BOS event. It was very scary the way I was fishing. I was fishing on Yale, and there was a giant pad field I had to kind of push my way into. It wasn't bad. Just kind of build up speed and go. Then you had to pull your drive and pedal into it. Once you got into it, there was lanes in there. But I was getting in really thick mats, and you would have holes that would be. I remember catching one of my key fish on day one in a hole about like that, flipping a wacky rig in it, and it's just pads everywhere else. So a spinning rod flipping in there, it makes you tense up really hard. But
so what size line were you using to fish around those pads?
so I was throwing 15-pound smackdown braid to a 15-pound Invisex leader.
Okay.
It's really big. I've never thrown a leader that big on a spinning rod before.
Not on spinning, no.
So it was kind of new for me to throw a line that big. Sometimes you go to make a big cast and you get knotted up. Your knot will get caught. Just because, we all have weaknesses. I can't tie an FG knot yet. I'm working on it.
Mm-hmm.
I just not got to that point yet where I feel comfortable to put that knot to the test with money on the line.
Yeah, I feel your pain.
Yeah. So
I can't do when there's not money on the line. I just don't have the eyes to do it anymore. It's so frustrating.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just so frustrating because then I have to get out my reading glasses and okay. Yeah, that's so 15-pound going to a 15-pound leader. Man. Wow.
How'd you do in that event, Jacob?
I finished 34th. I lost a couple key fish both days. Honestly, I didn't lose many, and that's what at the end of the tournament, I was kind of upset when I figured out I missed a check by 3 inches.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and one of the last ones I hooked was about a 20-incher, and my smallest one was a 15 that day. So I was like, man, that would put me in the check. But I started thinking, how blessed I was to land what I landed. There was no excuse of how I should have landed those fish. And I'm pushing myself as far as I can in these pads to pitch in these little holes, and then to get them across basically the mat of pads and into the kayak. I shouldn't have landed half of what I did.
And with 15-pound line, man, wow. In that kind of cover, that's I fished down here in southern Louisiana where the cover is just insane.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of punching, so I know how that. It's not easy.
Yeah. No, every one of them, especially the big ones, obviously, they were right on the edges, so there would be a hole, and the pads going around it. So right where those pads were, right at the edge, is where they would be. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if it was just the sun had pushed them up on there. I was looking for beds, and I never saw a single fish on a bed in that area. They may have been. I just couldn't see them under the pads.
What was it? Dirty water?
I was on Lake Yale, so it was really clear.
Really clear, okay. Because you almost never see the pads down here in the swamp. If I go any further north, I can see beds, but down in the swamp, you're never gonna see. You just have to, go across one.
Yeah,
and you can tell it's a bedding bass when you can't hook into the dang thing.
Yeah, I caught some fish and practiced in a different area on that lake, not too awful far, and they were 100% on bed. You grab them and they'd start pee everywhere. And I was like, oh, okay, that was cool. And then I caught a lot of I didn't catch a lot of fish, but I would catch one and I would move 30 yards down, make a cast, hook one, shake it off, move 50 yards, cast, catch one. I was like, wow, they're loaded in here. And I never went back there in the tournament just because I didn't think I could catch the size there that I could in those pads. But yeah, so I figured they were spawning, and I heard people catching them on a bed, but I could not see them.
So can I ask you what kind of wacky worm you're using?
So I should have wrote all of it down. So I had went down there. I'd stopped at Bass Pro. Bass Pro is a big sponsor of ours. Sure. They give us a discount on stuff. So I had just bought a 30-pack of Stickos in June bug. And
that's what I started on, back in the 90s.
I don't know how long I made it. Maybe a quarter of the way through the day, it was gone. And I had used that bag through practice. So then I started throwing. I had some bitters worm, which bitters are a big deal in Florida. Their speed worm is phenomenal. But what I noticed was that bitters worm I don't know what it was in. I guess it's a salt content. It floated more. That sticko would sink more, and it made it a lot easier to cast. I could kind of guide it in the wind, and I could place it where I wanted to, versus that bitters was kind of lighter, so it was kind of harder for me to get. At least if I'm casting really far, it was hard for me to get it in those small holes. So I threw bitters, worms, stickos. I threw generals. Went through that pack. I started throwing regular Cincos, threw all the ones I had. I bought some Gambler Aces for the next day, about 2 packs of them, and some other brand that I had never heard of before, but I thought it would still work. And I went through all of them. And a lot of it, wasn't like, oh, I didn't catch 100 fish a day. It was not like that.
No.
But I mean, I would probably catch 20 to 30 fish a day. But
That's a lot.
It was
lake,
so much fun.
That's a lot of fish for a Florida lake.
Yeah, but a lot of times that I get hung in those pads trying to reel it back to me, and I had 15-pound line, so I would just reel and pull straight to get it back, and it would break that worm about every time. So I tried to go get some of them, but a lot of times they would just fall off or whatever. And sometimes make a good long cast, and it just worm goes flying. Half a mile seems like.
Right. Been there.
So,
one of my favorites that I discovered in the last 4 years is the missile baits, the 48. It's just different. It sinks differently. It has a different action. It casts differently. It's just wow. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I have wacky worms that I use for less than 3 feet of water, from 4 to 5 feet of water, and the Senkos, I can use those all the way up to about 8 feet of water.
Yeah, and I think that, I still caught fish on all of the worms. I like the heavier worms with more salt content so they would sink faster. I think it was kind of a reaction bite. I think those fish were just positioned under there due to the sun. And because like the main area, like where you could travel, there was like a little lane, seems like a boat lane almost. But there was a bunch of like hydrilla and stuff there. But underneath the pads, I guess where the sun couldn't really get it that well, there was nothing. I guess it had just better bottom. So those fish were sitting there, probably, spawning or post-spawning, just sitting there under the pads, and they're just falling in front of their face just made them react to it. And I think the faster it fell, the quicker they would react. And obviously, the faster it would fall, the faster I could fish it, which means the more water I could cover.
Yes. Brad, do you have any other questions you want to ask?
No, I was just going to ask him how he was rigging it.
I was throwing a VMC weedless Nico hook.
Okay.
I was throwing that, and then I ran out of those, and I was throwing Hayabusa. I don't remember the exact name, but it was a Hayabusa wacky rig hook.
So
were you using an O-ring? Were you skin hooking it straight through?
I was just hooking it straight in the middle.
What did you break off a lot?
I actually did not break. I broke off one fish, and this because the second day, because we can talk after. They made the rule now you can't talk during the tournament, even to competitors. You can't talk to nobody.
Right.
But after the tournament's over, I could talk to whoever. So I was staying with Ewing. We're kind of with the team. We're helping him and Jackson travel to some of these events. To kind of get the word out. Hey, Carson-Newman has a kayak fishing team. And he gave me a bunch of shell beds to go try. So I broke off one fish on a shell bed. I felt a knot, and in my head, I thought I had, 12-pound line on it for some reason. I thought I had beefier line, but I think I had 8 on it. And I felt it, and I was like, that's fine. I'm not really catching any big ones. Yeah, and I threw out there in one bit. I reeled down a pow. Never saw it. It didn't feel like a giant when it bit. So that one doesn't really haunt me. But I don't know how, but I never broke off a single fish in the pads. I lost a couple that would get me hung up. By the time I got to them, they would come off. They came off. Yeah. Or there was one that got hung up. I got to it, got the net out, was reaching for it, and it jumped and threw the hook. But I don't think I broke off any in the pads.
Okay.
Way cool.
Well, Jacob, at the end of the interview, we always ask our guests if you'd like to make any shout outs.
Oh, awesome. So first, I want to thank the good Lord. I'm getting paid to coach fishing, getting paid to travel and fish.
Way cool.
So I'm super blessed to be able to do what I do. Thankful for the school, for all they do for, the anglers and for us as coaches. I guess I should include my parents in this for always being there and backing me, pushing me, making me, become the best man that I can be, and shaping me into the man who I am today. I want to thank, the dugout right here on my head. Jamie and them have been fantastic to work with, helping us out, getting whatever we need, getting us in and out as quick as he possibly can. Highly recommend them for anybody interested in really anything. They're really well known for their kayak stuff, but they have a very high-end fishing selection too. Anybody in the Marietta, Georgia area wanting to, go look at tackle, they're real close to Atlanta. So if you're traveling down 75, they're maybe 5 minutes off the interstate, so it's not bad to get off and get back on. Dakota Lithium, Craig Storms has been great. He sent us all kinds of batteries and power boxes for our guys to run. So huge thanks to him. Seaguar Line, they provide us with line every year. They send us a bunch of spools, and if we go through that, they give us a discount on it. Z-Man Fishing Products giving us a huge discount, which is really nice to not spend $20 on a jackhammer.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, so that's really good. Trying to think of who else. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. I know we just picked up a new sponsor, Box Contractors. They're out of Indiana. I guess mine ran blank. I guess if Hunter is watching this, I want to give a thanks to Hunter for trusting me to lead this team and to help him. I could never repay him for allowing me to do this. It's been an absolute blast.
Well, thank you so much. Do you have anything you'd like to ask in closing, Brad?
No, I appreciate you coming on and being here with us and going over that. And good luck at your upcoming tournaments.
I appreciate it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll see you out there somewhere.
Awesome. Yeah.
Get 2 thumbs up, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on.
We're looking forward to following you guys for the next several years.
Awesome. We appreciate the support.
And I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to the Bassin Magazine podcast. Bassin Magazine, guys. Bassin Magazine is the official magazine of the Weekend Angler. Proud to be a part of it. Guys, it's Wednesdays. Make your plans to go fishing tonight. Because remember, you only get to do this once. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Carson-Newman University. Thank you, Brad Yole. And with that, Jacob, stick around. We'd like to talk to you for a couple minutes afterwards. I'm going to end the podcast. Thanks a lot, guys.